How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for asking. How about you?
I'm doing very well. Where are you calling from?
So, in fact, I'm from Iraq, but currently I live in Turkey.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it sounds like your English is very good. How long have you been studying?
So, I have been studying English for 1 years and 2 months, maybe.
Okay. Wow. Well, I've had students on here who've been learning for a lot longer and don't speak as well as you do. So congratulations.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you
Um,
much. So, you're from America,
so
right?
actually, well, no, I'm from Canada originally, but I grew up in the United States, and currently I live in Argentina in South America.
Argentina. That's great. How much? For how many time? For how much time? Sorry, you have been living in Argentina.
I've been here for 6 months, and I'm going to stay for another four. So when I leave, it will be 10 months, and I teach English, so I go to different countries, and after Argentina, my goal is to go to Spain because I'm learning Spanish, so I like living in Spanish-speaking countries.
I was gonna ask you about which languages they speak in Argentina. I think it is Portuguese, right?
No, it's Spanish.
Spanish.
Portuguese is yeah, the only country in South America that speaks Portuguese is Brazil. All of the rest speak Spanish.
Spanish. So, is there any difference between the Spanish in Argentina and the Spanish in Spain?
Yeah, but it's kind of it has to do with the accent. So it's
Yeah,
sort of like the difference between American English and British English. It's the same language, but it just sounds a little
yeah,
different. Um, but
exactly.
I'm curious, do you when you hear English speakers, is there an accent that is easier for you that you prefer?
I mean, usually South African accent is very clear, you know,
Hmm.
and maybe Ireland, Irish accent is also clear. I mean, usually all of tutor who teach English on Cambly, they try to speak slowly and clearly to the
Yeah.
students, but sometimes there are some American tutor who has very different accents, you know. But I
Yeah.
understand him, but of course not every word. Yeah,
Sure. Yeah,
yeah,
there are a lot of dialects inside of each
yeah,
accent. So yeah, I think I speak, even though I'm from Canada, because I grew up in the US, I think I speak with a pretty neutral
yeah.
American accent. But yeah, there are people from the South, states like Atlanta, South Carolina, Alabama. They have a very specific accent. Texas, California, New York, they all speak differently.
Yeah.
So,
But
um,
actually, I would rather American accent because it is the most popular. Even for example, on Netflix, almost all of series and movies it's made by American, you know, an American
yeah.
accent. Even video games such as GTA and like everywhere. I mean, I think American accent is the most popular actually.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's for better or for worse. I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
know if the American accent is, I don't think that there are levels of superiority where it's like one is better than the other. It's just that,
no,
yeah, the American accent is more, it's just
but
heard more often. So it's, yeah.
but Canadian accent is also I like it because because of you are Canadian. Do you know Jordan Peterson?
Yeah. I'm don't really, I haven't read his stuff, but I know the name. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so he's Canadian too, but his accent it's perfect. So I
Yeah.
mean, I always listening to him actually to learning from him, like to learning from his accent, and also to learn something from him because he's a psychologist, and I really like him actually. And I recently I bought his book. I really like it, you know.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, listening um, to speakers who you can understand and who
Yeah,
you enjoy their content, that's a great way to learn. When I was learning Spanish, I listened to a YouTube channel. It was a Buddhist monk who was from Uruguay, and so he spoke with a very clear Spanish accent. But because he was a Buddhist monk, he spoke slowly. He spoke
yeah,
very clearly. He chose all of his words. So these days, if I listen to him, he actually sounds kind of slow to me. Like now I'm used to faster Spanish, but I still like listening to him because he's just, I like the way he speaks and I like what he says. So it's a good technique.
yeah. I mean, it's like it depends on. I mean, everyone has the way, his own way to learn a language. For example, some people like learning a language by reading or writing or listening or watching TV series. It depends. But I mean, when I started learning English almost 1 years ago. I started as beginner, of course, and I started by my own. I'm self-learner, so I just watched the TV series on Netflix, and yeah, I started learning new words. Like
Yeah.
that's all. I mean, I didn't study grammar at all. I mean,
Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, it is interesting. I think about this a lot myself because like you, I learned on my own and yeah, I had to kind of find what worked for me. So, I started with an app on my phone,
yeah,
and from there, when I felt comfortable with certain grammar and vocabulary, then I started to read the news in Spanish, and
yeah,
if I found a word I didn't know, I wrote it down. So yeah, I learned through reading mostly at first, and then I started transitioning to watching videos, and now I live in a country where I speak it every day. It just slowly gets better.
yeah. I mean, like, for example, 1 years ago, let's say 1.5 years ago, when I graduated from high school, I couldn't speak anything in English. Like I couldn't say hi, how are you in English, and like, can you imagine? 12 years you study at school and
Hmm.
you didn't learn anything, but when you studied just 1 years by
Yeah,
yourself and in the way you like, I started speak English. I mean, so
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, so
It,
I think the problem here is about education system, you know. So
mhm. No,
yeah,
I agree. I think a big problem is the way that the information is taught to students. Another thing, because again, there's a parallel between my life and yours. I studied Spanish when I was a kid, um, but I just studied enough to pass the tests so that I could get a grade and move on. And so I didn't study the language to actually use it. Um,
yeah,
so the education system, it's not perfect, but then also I think most students, a lot of children, they don't have the maturity to understand that this is useful and that they should really try to learn it. So I think learning as an adult, you have a different motivation to do it.
yeah. I mean, exactly as you said. Like for example, I mean, personally, I did that too. I didn't study English to learn it. I just studied to pass this class.
Hmm.
So and I was like, why we learn English? Because
Yeah,
they didn't show to us that how much it's important, like to learn in English.
yeah,
We just say that if you don't study, you cannot pass this class, and if you cannot pass this class, you will not complete your term. So
yeah.
that's the problem actually.
And the other thing is there there are a lot of benefits to learning a language beyond the usefulness. English is very useful. Obviously, it's spoken almost everywhere. And if it's not, you'll be able to find somebody else who speaks English. But there are physical benefits to like your brain. The brain of a bilingual person um, is less likely to develop diseases like Alzheimer's
Yeah,
or dementia as it gets older. So it does something to the structure of your brain where it makes it stronger and more resilient and um, once you learn one language and you realize it's possible and there are all these benefits, then you want to learn more. Like
yeah,
now I am learning Portuguese, so it's a different language than Spanish, but it's similar enough that I just decided to take the extra step
yeah.
and learn Portuguese.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, for example, I can speak four languages, you know, but
Wow.
and I didn't want to learn German, but I decided that I have to put my all these four languages in high level, in most possible high level. After that, I have to learn German because if you search about it on internet, you see people who say I can speak 10 or 15 languages, but
Yeah.
I mean, they cannot read in these languages. They just can have basic conversation
Yeah.
like we do now. But if you give him, for example, for example, English, I mean, if I mean, or German language book, they will not, they cannot understand it because they just can have basic conversation. So it means you don't know these languages. You just can have basic conversation. So I decided that I have to put my all of these four languages in the most possible high level. After that, I will learn German, but not right now. So, because if you don't, if you cannot read in these languages, so what's point in learning these languages? You don't know it. Why you trying to learn a new languages while you don't know the languages you know it, you know? Did you
Yeah.
understand what I mean? Very complicated
Yeah.
that.
I agree completely. I think those people who say I speak 10 languages, they just
Yeah,
it makes them feel important, but
yeah,
you're right, it's a very shallow, superficial knowledge of the language. And
yeah,
I'm like you. I would prefer, if I'm going to learn something, I want to know it perfectly from top to bottom. I want to be able to speak without mistakes. I want to understand everything.
yeah.
So we don't have much time left, but I'm curious, what are the languages that you speak?
So I'm from Iraq. So we have two official languages in Iraq. So I can speak Sorani Kurdish and Arabic. And I have been living in Turkey for more than 8 years. That's why I can speak Turkish fluently too. And
Okay.
English actually. We can count English, right? English too.
Yeah, yeah. I know you say you still have room to improve, but I'd say you're even at like an advanced level. It
Thank you very
doesn't
much.
sound like
I mean,
intermediate to me. You sound like you're having a proper English conversation, so I think you're
thank you very
doing
much.
very
But I have to along the way actually because when I trying to reading a book in English, I mean I cannot understand anything. Like I just can understand 40% of the book. But I have a longer way because actually learning it is something. It is for like. There's not the end of it, you have to learn every day, even in your native language. Like you sometimes when you read the books in your native language, you are seeing the new words, you have to learn it. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Well, it's a long process, but I think you're doing very well. And if you got this far in a year, year and a half, I think in another year you'll be perfect, and then you'll be able to start German.
Thank you very much. I hope, yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
thanks for the great conversation today,
thank you very
and
much.
good luck
i
with
I
everything.
deeply appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Take care.
Have a great day. Ciao, bye, thank you.
Ciao. Bye.
Bye.